The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Welcome back to the Personal Safety Show. Once again, I am Marcus Melnick of Firearm Mentor, and today with me I have Nicole Sanders from the John Birch Society. Nicole, welcome. We're going to be getting into what the John Birch Society is and how they're involved with the UN, with the United States, with firearms rights. But before we get into that, Nicole, can you tell our listeners, what is your origin story? Where did you come from? How did you get involved in activism?
I was born and raised in Illinois, moved to Texas as fast as I could, about my 20th birthday. And shortly after, I read Atlas Shrugged. It encouraged me to go back to school. About my second year of college, I started a Young Americans for Liberty chapter on campus, made a sign that said, "Defend gun rights," on campus, and I went out to talk to students so I could host a first meeting. And I was soon approached by a lady from the administration office, told me that I was outside of the free speech zone and that I was not allowed to talk to students without their permission. The interaction was recorded. It was put online, went viral, and about a year later, changed speech codes to align with the Constitution, as well as we got rid of the free speech area. So that was kind of my start into activism. After school, I took an internship with the Leadership Institute, moved to DC to then work for the Atlas Society. From there, I moved to Denver to start the Center to Keep and Bear Arms, the only in-house litigation firm in the country dedicated to the Second Amendment. I raised the first 5 years of funding and the startup capital to launch that before coming to the John Birch Society. Specifically talks about their stance on free speech and that it's important to them. Okay. We don't have so much leeway at private universities. You know, what they say is what they say. Always record if someone does come up to you. You don't have to ask the school for permission, but find something that's important to you. Go out and see if you can find people who also want to do something about it.
If we wanted to see that viral video, where can we see it? What's the search word, keywords? Is it still up? I want to see it.
I think it's on the website of the free speech organization that defended me in court, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. All they do is defend free speech on college. Well, they used to just defend free speech on college campuses for students, professors, and other staff. They recently expanded that to fight for free speech outside of schools.
Was there a cost to help you in court or to support you in court, or are they funded through different means?
They're funded by donors and foundations.
Okay, so it didn't cost you anything to...
No, yeah.
Good. Can you tell everyone, what is the John Birch Society?
We are an organization that started in 1958 by Robert Welch. He was a candy maker. He made the Sugar Daddy's candy and other ones like that. And he planned to retire with his wife. He loved poetry. And if you read any of his books, you'll see that throughout. Yeah, and he planned to retire and travel the world with his wife and read poetry. And he was just looking around the country and saw this sweeping communist tide and decided that he needed to start an organization to be the front against communist influence in our country. We are a chapter-based organization, so we have members all across the country, actually in other parts of the world. They organize on the local level to defend the Constitution in their area. There's nothing we can do about what's going on in LA or New York or even, the state next door. What you do have power to do is change things in your area, going, to city council meetings, calling your legislatures. So we believe that a chapter working with members of the community, we call it the power of 500. You get 500 people in one congressional district to get on your side, to be advocating for, say, let's make our county a Second Amendment constitutional county. Quite a few counties have done that up in Wisconsin. All you need is 500 people. When you look at the amount of people who actually vote, and in comparison to your county, you can actually sway the vote. We've seen it happen with our chapters across the country. And one thing our members like the most about JBS is the publication we produce called The New American. We've been producing it longer than JBS has been around, although we've called it different things. And it is a bi-weekly publication where nothing we've ever published has been fake news, or anyway, the left has never been able to attack us about that information. They always go after other things. And we try to educate. The problems with our country is not the Constitution or necessarily politicians. Politicians are a product of the area they live in. Back in the 1800s, the majority of Americans knew the Constitution. It was very rare that someone did not. And today, that's the opposite. It's very rare that someone does know the Constitution. That's the biggest issue we have today. Changing the Constitution doesn't do anything if politicians don't follow it. It's such a big risk when there are other options. Say we do open up the Constitution and only a balanced budget amendment gets put in, or term limits gets put in. How do you enforce that? How do you get the politicians to follow that part of the Constitution? It's only going to be done by Americans holding legislatures accountable outside of political elections, not caring about the letter in front of their name, calling them when they're voting unconstitutionally. Politicians only do something when there's the threat that they'll get voted out of office. And that is why JBS is around. We want to educate Americans so they'll hold politicians accountable and vote in constitutional ones.
You mentioned communism, and you don't know this, but you're going to find out in a minute. My great-grandfather was a Secret Service agent during World War I. The Secret Service wasn't what it is today. It's partially what it is today, protecting the president, following Abraham Lincoln, but his division, which was called the American Protective League, their job was to interrogate and investigate immigrants from communist countries to find out if they were communists.
Wow.
During World War I, and in my other room, I have his badge and a medal he got from the government.
What a cool job.
It was, and I'm named after him, so he passed away before I was born, but some of these stories are passed down, but they're kind of lost. The other thing I hear you saying is people should think globally and act locally. Is that a correct summation of what you just said about going to local meetings, that type of thing?
I would say think locally, act locally.
Okay.
Globalism to me is discounting American values and principles, the expense of global friendship or
kowtowing to foreign leaders.
Yeah. Yes. So beware of the globalism trap.
Can you explain what happens at a chapter meeting? What does a John Birch Society do? How are chapter meetings run? What's the benefit of going to a meeting?
Chapters are ran at the chapter leader's home. They have an assistant leader and a secretary, and they work on the main thing, educating their community. So they do that by hosting a Constitution training series that we have. It's a 6-part series, and so they'll do that at their home or the library to bring in the community and start engaging them. They'll host video showings of different documentaries and movies just to start getting the conversation going. They also host events. So they'll bring in a speaker, work with other organizations or a church to continue educating their community. So that is the main part of a chapter, is planning what they're going to do and what do they want to accomplish in their community. Great. Say hosting the Constitution series, but what good does that do? You've hosted a whole 6-part training series, then what? There's a lot more to it than just educating without doing anything behind that. What makes JBS different than other groups is that we offer solutions to the problems going on. We look at the education system. The house is burning down, and you can't leave your kids in there while it's burning. You have to take them out, put the fire out, and then let them go back. So we started a K-12 Judeo-Christian homeschool that is very reasonably priced. There's a few different options. You just order the curriculum from us and that's all, or you can actually have live teachers teaching your kids. So that, you don't need to know how to do algebra or second year math. There's, your kids interact with a live teacher. With all of the issues we talk about, we give a solution. All of our meetings, they start and end in a prayer. We believe, without God's help, we have no chance of winning. And yeah, I think that's about it. If the chapters don't leave the meeting room, our Constitution is not going to be saved. It's just a piece of paper. It cannot defend itself. It needs Americans to do it. We want our chapters out of the meeting room as much as possible, or nothing will be done.
So what would they do in the community other than educate the community? What's some other activities that JBS chapters would get involved in?
Quite a few of my chapters are really looking into their local comprehensive plan, also known as a master plan or a land use plan. Mostly because this is how the Sustainable Development Goals are being played out on the local level. I know a lot of people think that they're not so much worried about the United Nations because they think there's no way Americans are going to let them come in here and do any of the things that they write about. They wrote a whole book called Agenda 21, the Sustainable Development Plan, that controls every aspect of your life, gets rid of private property. Everything belongs to the collective. It is taking control out of the local level into a more condensed statewide level is what it's starting at now, or condensing counties. You see this with with dispatch units, the police, firefighter. That is all part of this Agenda 21 plan, which is written into your comprehensive plan. So this is going on across the country. Even in, I believe it's Alabama, they passed a law banning all Agenda 21 activity in the state. But every county, every city, every municipality all have comprehensive plans. The Sustainable Development Goals are still being played out. And the majority of Americans have no idea what's going on in their backyard. Local zoning is being changed. They're requiring different landowners to give up a certain amount of acres of their land to a conservancy in order to build a house. The more you read it, the more it sounds ridiculous. It sounds like there's no way that they could ever do that. These plans, they will control land, water, industry, housing, getting rid of single-family housing. That is a big one. I found the local planners dictionary. They have an official dictionary for their planners, which is very hard to find. They don't make it very easy. And the way they define these terms is, when I say controlling every aspect of your lives, I mean every aspect. There's a definition for prohibited plants. You will have a list of plants you will not be allowed to plant. They are going to control how far away you can build your house from the curb. They'll have pedestrian corridors. These definitions, they say that your private wells, if you have solar where you're able to store power, septic systems, these are public property. There is no more private property. Everything belongs to the collective. And if you don't comply, you will be considered a non-conforming.
Are these assault plants? I'm kidding. Sorry. Go ahead.
So we do something now. These plans, they are updated every 20 years. All the ones we have now end 2030. If we don't stop it now, if they complete all of the goals in these plans, goodbye to our sovereignty. And I think it is the biggest threat to our liberty right now. Second Amendment restrictions are not coming from Washington. They're coming from the United Nations. They even have a statue outside of their headquarters in New York City with a gun and like a rope pulling it away, like pulling from the barrel. They call it the nonviolence something. Their ultimate goal, complete control. I'm only 32, so, until Jesus comes, I want to enjoy the freedom that America offers.
So are all these changes necessarily bad? And I'm going to explain what I mean. In my previous career, I worked for a police department. Actually, I worked for a couple police departments, but this one I'm talking about, the town was 4 square miles. They had an integrated police and fire department and their own dispatch center. After I left there, the way that what you just said, dispatch consolidation worked is if the population of a municipality is less than 25,000 people, that they should not have their own dispatch center. And I know there's positives and negatives to both sides of the story, but is there a positive there with cost savings on consolidating at least some public safety resources? And it's okay if you disagree and say no. It's a law. You have to do it.
Oh, they're being required by the state?
As of about 10 years ago, yes, it is a state law requirement.
They all sound great. Sunshines and rainbows.
It was to save money. It's to save tax money.
Looking at these plans have an impact, or do you want that power to go up to people who don't care what you have to say, who don't live where you live, who are bought and paid for?
What I hear you saying is that people who live in the community know what's best for the community and should make decisions for the community. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, you said it in a very perfect way. Yeah. Perfect.
Awesome. What type of organizations would be anti-JBS, or what type of organizations would work against the JBS type agendas?
Labeled racist, sexist, anti-Semitic. I would say recently what I've noticed, attacks against Birchers would be, with the John Birch Society, would come from a convention of states. Even though we probably agree on every other issue, right? Well, we're both patriots who want to save America, just with different solutions. We don't believe opening up the Constitution is a good idea. The people who will be changing the Constitution or adding to it, amending it, are not of the same mindset that our founding fathers were. What kind of changes do you think the delegates coming out of New York and Illinois and California, the majority of legislatures are rhinos? So who do you think they're going to pick? Court precedent has been set that the body of a convention is a sovereign entity. They don't answer to the legislator. They answer to the people. So once that meeting starts, they are sovereign and they can do what they want. So I would say that is a big pushback. A lot of it are just anti-Americans, communists. Some guy just wrote a book attacking JBS, and a lot of news sites have been interviewing him. There's a lot of organizations fighting for individual and personal freedom. They just don't like the John Birch Society because we look at it as we are attacking the root of the problem, right? We can get all new legislatures in tomorrow, but if they don't follow the Constitution, it does no good. So we attack the left and the right. We don't have many organizations that are friendly towards JBS or want to work with us.
Okay, so you're leaders in that space is what I hear you saying. Which is wonderful. How can someone support the John Birch Society, JBS, or join the cause? What are some resources that you can provide to the listeners so that they can do their own research, make their own decision, and quite possibly, if they're interested, join JBS?
We have people that we work with that are not members of the John Birch Society that work with our chapters. They attend meetings, will help host events.
That's fantastic. What final thoughts can you share with our listeners on what they can do, how they can have the correct mindset?
And we are fighting communists, nobody else.
That's fantastic. What final thoughts can you share with our listeners on what they can do, how they can have the correct mindset, and how to approach societal issues with the support of John Birch Society?
We have people that we work with that are not members of the John Birch Society that work with our chapters. They attend meetings, will help host events. But I would say the number one thing you can do is educate yourself on what is going on locally? Have you read your comprehensive plan? Have you talked to your city council members? What does that look like in your area? Unless you educate yourself, there's not a whole lot that you can do. So I would say start there. Being a member is great. It gives you access to our chapters. You get a subscription to the New American. You get access to a lot of different things on the website that are on the members only side. And you get a network of pro-liberty people that you can meet with, that you can work together to save the Constitution. I'm going to just say this again. I truly think that the biggest threat to our freedoms is coming from your local comprehensive land use plan, master plan. Find your future land use map. That'll tell you how much your city council plans to change your community just in the next, 7 years? Some of them are quite different. These comprehensive plans are attacked on rural and suburbia, trying to move everybody into the city. If you've heard the 15-minute city, look up your mitigation plan. That is county's plan on how to get you out of rural and suburb areas and moving into the city. Also called managed retreat. Wisconsin has already used it, moving a whole town to a different area. So educate yourself, get involved, whether that's with the John Birch Society or Gun Save Life or your local Republican Party or Patriot group. But get involved. Start talking to your legislatures. Start talking to your neighbors, because that's the only way we will save our country.
Thank you. I'm going to give some other thoughts, and I'm not sure if people caught this, but I certainly did. What Nicole is saying is talk to your legislators, read the plans, and what she didn't say is go to the media and look at their summaries of the plans, because honestly, I've said this over and over again, the news is no longer the news. The news is editorial, and people will latch on to whatever they believe in. So to be objective, you need to, very much like the John Birch Society attacks the root cause of the problem, you need to look at the actual documents. And in previous shows, I've mentioned that with the assault weapons ban in Illinois, that get a copy of the law and read the law. If you need help interpreting it, people can help you interpret it, but read the law. Don't read what CBS, NBC, ABC, or even what I say, because we all have a little bit of a skewed perspective on life. I'm very pro-gun, as you guys have seen. I'm very pro-safety, and I'm anti-violence. What that means is I don't care what implement is used, firearm, knife, car, bomb, I'm anti-violence, whereas other people in the world, or in the country, I should say, are anti-gun. But they don't care if someone gets stabbed or hit in the head with a bottle or whatever.
So, ran over.
So do your own research. Nicole, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. I look forward to our continued conversations outside of the radio show.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's been great.
I'd like to share with our listeners what's coming up for the rest of the summer. I will be doing a series on how the police explorers of yesterday became the leaders of today. We will be interviewing police chiefs, public work chiefs, physicians, elected officials, law enforcement experts, and CEOs. These are all people who I grew up with in the Skokie Police Department's Explorer program, and we'll be talking to some people who were in other Explorer programs and talk about their successes as well. Unfortunately, on September 1st, 2015, Fox Lake Police Lieutenant Joe Glinowitz was found dead in a wooded area in Fox Lake, and the incident had national coverage. It was initially believed that he was chasing two offenders and had two gunshot wounds. One of them hit his cell phone, one of them actually pierced his chest, and he died. The national manhunt went on. There was a woman who said two people that fit the description approached her car. Tons of police were out, and Joe was celebrated. He was an Army veteran. He also had training in SWAT, police dog handling, and became an evidence technician, and then also worked his way up. So no slouch. And at the time of his death, he was about to retire. He was 1 month away from a 30-year career retirement. So what happened? Well, shy of 8 a.m. on September 1st, 2015, the lieutenant radioed that he was pursuing 3 people described as 2 white and 1 black at an abandoned cement plant in Fox Lake. About 20 minutes later, 8:09 a.m., officers responded to his request for backup. They discovered his deceased body in a wooded marsh about 50 yards from the vehicle. His head was also scraped and bruised, and the terrain was otherwise undisturbed, so he wasn't really chasing anyone. His handgun was found about an hour later, and it was only 1 yard from his body, so that's how marshy it was. And other pieces of police equipment were found scattered all over. So there was a manhunt. His wife ended up being investigated, and they found out that he and his wife were embezzling 5 figures from the Police Explorer program for things like vacation, mortgage payments, gym memberships, and pornography. The Explorer post in Fox Lake was disbanded after that. Now, this gave a glimpse into the bad things that may happen in the organizations. However, my series will flip that around and talk about the awesome, great successes of the individuals whom I grew up with and I learned with, as well as a few others in other programs. So this is exciting. We're going to be reminiscing. We're going to be talking about all sorts of things. Stay tuned. They found out that he and his wife were embezzling 5 figures from the Police Explorer program for things like vacation, mortgage payments, gym memberships, and pornography. The Explorer post in Fox Lake was disbanded after that. Now, this gave a glimpse into the bad things that may happen in the organizations. However, my series will flip that around and talk about the awesome, great successes of the individuals whom I grew up with and I learned with, as well as a few others in other programs. So this is exciting. We're going to be reminiscing. We're going to be talking about all sorts of things. Stay tuned. Stay safe out there, and pretty soon I'll see you at the shooting range. This is Marcus Melnick with Firearm Mentor, signing off. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.